Hi everyone, it's Oliver here and I'm back with Rob Hill for another audio commentary, and this time it's on the theatrical cut of Alien Resurrection. You can enjoy this podcast by itself, but if you wish to sync it with your own copy of the film on Blu-ray or NTSC DVD, put the timestamp to 0 and press play now. So Rob, did you go to see us at the cinema? Because I had to wait till VHS because I was a little bit too young. I was 15 when it came out, so...
Oh my god. I was funnily enough, this came out in my first year at university, right as I was sort of really developing a love for film and expanding that love into other areas. So I kind of had like a sage, a guru type guy who just knew much more about movies than me, and I really went to him for my pointers on what to think, where to go, and so on. And he was obsessed with this movie when it came out. He absolutely loved it.
Wow.
And because I think he was a big fan of Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Right, yeah.
So through that, and before I saw this, I'd sort of just really got into those Caro and Jeunet movies, Delicatessen and The City of Lost Children.
Yes.
And so when this came out, I was primed and hyped. And I don't think I saw it in the cinema somehow, but... maybe I did, I can't remember, but I really liked it when I first saw it. I was absolutely all guns blazing.
Do you think it sort of made up for the mistakes on 3?
I certainly much preferred it to 3, and I much preferred, and still do much prefer, how much more effective it is at what it's trying to do, if that makes any sense. Alien 3 was a lot more ambitious, obviously, and in a way is a much better film. There's elements to it that are really impressive, whereas this is just a schlock movie. It's just, and I like that. That's my bag, and I feel like they've got as much as they could have done, or as much as anyone reasonably has a right to expect, out of the Alien franchise in terms of it being really creative and artistic and effective and so on. So for it to just descend into total schlock, I'm fine with that. And Jeunet, weirdly, it's one of the least interesting to look at and one of the least inventive of any of the movies, despite the director arguably being the most visually oriented and innately creative of anyone who's tackled the franchise. So yeah, I kind of like this movie.
Well, it's clear they hired him just down to the fact that he'd done Delicatessen and like the city. I think especially the City of Lost Children, which was I'd only seen bits of it when I was younger, and I probably sat through it not long ago, the 4K one they put out on Blu-ray, and I thought, wow, this does look incredible. And I achieved a lot with the budget. But I felt the story was kind of somewhat a bit kind of confusing to follow. I just didn't fully engage with it. And but you could see that the track record of Fox was to get someone who was kind of slightly cheap, but they could utilize their visual style to make something quite unique for another sequel. And what we learned from the making of the movie was that this was a studio picture. Jean-Pierre Jeunet was a gun for hire, and he kind of did what he was told, but had some creative freedom. And I think that's why it sort of comes out not feeling so messy as Alien 3, because it's very much like a straightforward thing. They had everything locked in. They had a script locked in. It wasn't the constant changes, but it was always just down to the fact that everyone had this kind of depressing feeling after number 3, and that was the end of this kind of fantastic franchise, and we've got to try and bring her back for a 4th one. I was a bit surprised they were going to do a 4th one, but it was always just down to the fact that they were just going to have to clone her, and that's what the writer Josh Whedon was always like struggling with. How are we going to do this about doing the typical thing of cloning someone? And I mean, his script was kind of touted as this kind of really impressive thing, and the cast loved it, and Sigourney thought it was brilliant. And I think I sent you a link the other day. It was an interview from Jean-Pierre, who he was interviewed like 2 years ago, and he said, like, he didn't care what people thought about the movie. He watched it again, thought it was great, and he was kind of questioned about Josh Whedon's opinions on the film kind of years later, where he said the script was great, but Jean-Pierre had kind of made people act wrongly, or people said the lines incorrect, or the tone of it and how it was shot, and then he kind of ruined it. And he was just like, I think Jean-Pierre just was like, well, fuck him.
Yeah.
So, and I think even at the time, actually, what kind of recently, Mark Kermode had said H.R. Giger hated this film, but Jean-Pierre said the opposite. And what at the time, H.R. Giger was just annoyed he wasn't credited for the visual designs, but he would get credit at the end, doing the end credits, but not doing the opening.
He was really riled by that, wasn't he, Giger? And at the end of the day, I think it's a bit difficult to take or to assume that someone who feels they've been so deeply wronged is perhaps going to have a fair perspective and assessment on the movie. You know, if he has slagged it off, it's easy to assume it's because he feels hurt effectively about what happens. But with Whedon's complaints, it's strange because, as far as I can gather, even Whedon admits that what we see on screen and what we hear, the dialogue, everything is what he wrote, but it's the tone that Genet employed, in creating his script. And he says, or Whedon says, that it was all meant to be much more light-hearted and much more like Serenity and Firefly, that kind of, which is a really odd one for me to get my head around, because I can't see how the Serenity type tone, it's a hell of a jump to go from Alien 3 to Serenity in terms of tone. Yeah. And I feel like one of the things this does really well is its sense of humour. I think it judges it really well, because it's, there's nothing to laugh at in the first three. There's no humour at all, or lightness, really.
Little bits, some like, Bill Paxton, but it's not like...
I guess, but it's
with
also
this,
kind of...
It's a little bit... It has elements where it isolates the humour, where Ron Perlman shoots the spider, which is one of my favourite moments in the film.
But it's also a bit more wink-wink, this humour, where like Paxton is like a comedy character within a serious film. But this is a different kettle of fish. It has ironic, absurd humour, especially absurd humour, woven into it. And I don't know, I feel like that Genet handled that really well, and it's part and parcel of it being like this character here. I mean, he's winking at us, and the guy with the eyebrows, who to me just looks like Leonid Brezhnev, the former leader of the Soviet Union. I don't know if that's a deliberate ploy on Genet's part, but it's uncanny how much he looks like him. That is it's an absurd character. It's not a comedy character; it's a proper absurd character.
They do have like slightly exaggerated performances in this, and that's what kind of makes it feel slightly different to the others, especially with like the captain, the performances just seems a little bit more over the top. It feels more comic booky. Some people sort of suggested this film feels like an offshoot of Alien, where it's like a comic book, like a what if kind of movie. It seems to be on its own. Despite it being the fourth in the series, it feels slightly detached from the others. Also on the visual level, it still looks incredible. There is that, again, it's the corridors and stuff. I think the people involved kind of knew the studio we want the scares of Alien, but we want the action of Aliens, and this is what the compromise of what it is. But I think the action itself isn't that much of it. I mean, there's got a few people shooting stuff, but all the soldiers get taken out off screen, and you get a few. I think the biggest set piece is probably like the underwater sequence, which is like extremely well done. But it's not like they're running around with pulse rifles shooting tons of aliens,
And there's Leonid Brezhnev.
Yeah,
that's
there's a very hairy back and arms, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, apparently there was originally a shot of him without his shirt on, but his chest was so hairy it was making audiences laugh. So I don't know if they had an alternate shot or they somehow put a T-shirt on him. But
so he's hairier than Robin Williams, I presume. So,
but yeah, with the action, I think what might be telling there is when you see Genet talking about his experience of the Alien franchise, and also the crew, a lot of whom he brought on from he brought over from France with him. They all bang on about how much they love Alien. I've never seen any of them ever mention Aliens. And it does kind of make you can really see how a French audience in particularly like an intellectual French audience, are not necessarily going to have any interest in Aliens and the action side of it, but are going to be really into the first one. But so it's kind of on the one hand he's got that, but he's also balancing it with what we've talked about before, that the fact that he really is a gun for hire in a way that no one else had been up until this point on the Alien franchise. He just wanted to do what the studio wanted. He just wanted to make a blockbuster movie for the fun of it. You know, he had no particularly strong ideas on most subjects, as far as I can gather. He just wanted the studio to be happy, and he wanted to make American blockbuster.
Because he treated it like a long commercial.
Yeah, he called it a long commercial.
Yeah.
What I thought was fascinating was he and his crew watched loads of American action sci-fi movies, mainstream movies, and counted how many shots there were, how many camera setups, how long the average take was, and then literally copied that. It's like they thought, okay, this is how, you know, a big successful action movie has a cut every 3.5 seconds on average. So this film will have a cut every 3.5. You know, that's a really weird approach for a creative filmmaker to take.
Yeah, because he looked at Alien and it says like 800 or something like that, and they had to sort of essentially double it. You know, just sort of.
Yeah. He said he wanted twice as many shots. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like a sort of bizarre analysis of a breakdown to sort of make sure that we are competing with modern films. But then you think technically, well, they've seen enough modern films. Okay, we need enough of these action set pieces, not to sort of break it down to a specific number. You know, it just seems a bit of a way
it's
to
a formula. He turned filmmaking into a mathematical formula, which is not, you know, he's the last filmmaker on earth you'd have expected to do that at the time. But that's because this was so far removed for him from what he considered cinema to be, that it was actually very easy for him to not sell out, but, you know, do what someone else wanted.
When I got hold of it on tape, I was lucky to get the widescreen version, which is quite handy back in the day when Fox started doing widescreen VHS tapes, and I think they kicked them all. I think they kicked it all off back in the early '90s. But I was always on the kind of I enjoyed the film at that age, but it was a sense that this was like a really gross movie. Like they really sort of went quite far with that compared to what we've seen with 3. Because this one didn't really scare you to a sense. It's more just like, oh, that is creepy. You know, that's a bit disgusting.
Yeah.
I think this is the gooeyest kind of
yes
film out of the series. You know, so much KY jelly used. You know, the aliens just constantly dribbling in this. You know, it's everywhere, and when we do see things kick off, it's always that, because they do a lot of in-camera stuff, don't they? So alien heads are always coming in from the side view, don't they? There's a lot of those shots where it's like stuff happening in the background, then the alien will come in the foreground with its head, and all clever shots like that. And I always also, with how the film starts, it goes straight into like, okay, we've cloned Ripley, here she is. I always felt there was kind of, maybe they should have a little bit of more of a breathing space before they introduce this clone of Ripley. Hence, maybe introduce us into this world which is 200 years in the future for number 3. Like, because he refers to now like we aren't some evil corporation, you know, whatever it is, you know, like Weyland-Yutani. Now she's in the hands of the military. Now Weyland is no longer exists, and so it would have been.
Wasn't it bought out by Walmart or something? Isn't there something
like that,
like some novelization or something where it's revealed that Weyland-Yutani were bought out by Walmart and then closed down or something? I can't remember now.
It'd be so good if it was like, the Tyrell Corporation. You'd be like, oh my god, it's all linked.
It's only a matter of time.
Well, the gentleman who did the miniatures on this also did the miniatures apparently on Alien Romulus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, bringing over the same people. I think there's a very distinctive look about this film because with the cameraman, Darius Kanji, he had also photographed 7 for Fincher, and I think they used that silver retention process of grading the film, which I think some of the fans have sort of speculated that the Blu-ray, the high definition one, doesn't really retain that look, but the Laserdisc and early DVDs did. So, really? Looking at it now, it still seems to be of that kind of colour nature, but it's very hard to decide. You know,
the black. I mean, it's not as visually stunning as I was expecting it to be. Revisiting it after a few, I saw this last time about 5 years ago, and I was expecting much more, to be honest. It's a lot more generic looking than it kind of should be in a way, but one thing that really looks great is that it's not the lighting, it's almost like the contrast. It's almost, the blacks are just, all the dark colours, there's so much darkness, all the dark colours are just great, and that you do get that kind of like a metallic, there on
black
the
and
on
white. It's like black and white, but with
Yeah.
like the colour in little sections, you know. So it's that, I think it's that silver retention thing where it looks like
exactly,
metallic, you know.
Yeah, but when they literally introduce the metallic thing silver into the printing process, so there's actually the silver in the print. But yeah, that works really well. The rest of it, I'm not sure about the spaceship designs. I'm not sure about the production design in general. It just seems a little bit generic, unless it's maybe because it's Jeunet and because he's got this extraordinary ability when it comes to faces. I think anyway, I love his approach to shooting faces, and I love his obsession with kind of like odd-looking people and shooting them in a really grotesque way or a really over-the-top way. Maybe it's the contrast there. But I mean that could be any number. This could be any number of sci-fi movies to me. This spaceship and this scene.
But it's got a great cast. I mean, it's good it brought over Ron Perlman again because he had worked with Jean-Pierre on Lost Your Children, and you've got like what was his name? Is it Dominique? No, that's the actor's name, not the character.
I can't remember.
Dominic Pignon, right?
Oh, Pinot. I always want to say Pignon, but I think it's pronounced Pinot. I can't remember, but yeah, that's a great example of a weird face, and he's shot just brilliantly. The peculiar angles that Jeunet gets his camera into to make the most of that face, and likewise Ron Perlman, who's also an unusual looking chap, and who Jeunet, as you mentioned, had actually sought out before simply because he liked the way he looked. In fact, because of that, I've always had a slight, I mean, I know Ron Perlman is American, but I've always had a vague sense that he's part French or something, because I think the first time I ever saw him was in City of Lost Children.
Well, yeah, that's why I saw pictures. Oh, well, no, I first saw him. It was it that Beauty and the Beast TV series with Linda Hamilton?
Yeah.
But I think it was under makeup though. So, but I kind of I knew it was him. But also he's got great, Michael Wincott, who's in it. Who I loved in The Crow.
I love me some Wincott. Yeah,
yeah, he's got such a great gravelly voice. He's he's been smoking Marlboro Red since he was 12 or something, and he was in what's it, The Crow? Yeah, The Crow and Prince of Thieves. And this, unfortunately, he doesn't last very long, which is a shame because. But it's always typical. They get a great actor to play perhaps like the leader of one team who will then get taken out, and they get the sort of subordinates or sort of supporting players to sort of get a bigger role as we see sort of progress through. But you can't kill off, Ron Perlman. It's just like ain't gonna happen. But some people have criticised the film that they felt Winona Ryder was kind of poorly utilised. There was a big hoo-ha about her, being her in this movie, and Sigourney Weaver, like this big, it was kind of made of a big deal, sort of a teaming up essentially with another sort of female protagonist.
I feel like I'm not entirely convinced she's perfectly cast. Really, she seems a little bit out of her depth, and perhaps just not. I don't know. Anyone can play spoilers, but anyone can play an android because they can be programmed to behave in any given way, and they can look like anyone wants them to look, and so on and so on. But somehow she's just not particularly convincing to me as what she. But that's not to say she's bad. It's just
I don't think she really gets any good dialogue because we've already figured out that she's already on this kind of mission because she's read the log that Ripley's on board. She's got to kill her, but we don't know what because she's been created, Winona Ryder's character, by androids, and apparently not many survived or got out from whatever, and she's one of the last remaining ones apparently.
That sounds familiar. That's a good idea for a movie. That you could almost just have a movie about that. Maybe someone hunting her.
Oh yeah. The spin-off series with her. Also, I like the idea when they put the cube in to create the whiskey and the laser cuts through it. I love that. It's quite a good blend of the visual effect there.
I love this line. I mean, Brezhnev. It's the number of times you see that. I think he's almost always lit from below. Yes, Brezhnev, and so are a whole bunch of the characters. Actually, it's a really interesting approach to lighting.
You've got fantastic cinematographer. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think that's what you could take away from this movie is that even if you don't particularly like it, it always, it still looks to business in areas where it's not quite because it's all in a spaceship and they're kind of confined to rooms. You can't really give you a huge amount of scope to it because you end up actually resulting in this movie is a lot of kind of close ups and mid shots.
Yeah.
So you always, as you say about how he's so good at framing people's faces. A lot of it is in people's faces a lot of the time.
Absolutely, yeah. It was an extraordinarily good, not whether it's a stroke of luck or just coincidence or what, but originally it was apparently meant to be a much bigger affair, wasn't it? But the budget ended up being smaller than anyone, particularly Jeunet, was expecting. So he said in one interview that he'd planned, I think he even mentioned that scene then, he'd planned, to have scenes conducted with people walking through enormous spaces or whatever, and ended up having to do a lot of people just in a room, tight in on their faces to avoid showing how limited the set was.
And it also shows you that it feels somewhat of an empty military spacecraft. You see guys escaping, but it often feels like it's quite low on staff. So that way it sort of suggests that they didn't have the space to have loads of people walking around. You could have a scene where two actors are coming towards the camera and they're passing other people that work there to create this kind of quite large number of people on the ship. But I think the movie would have probably been best served to be 185 and not scope.
Yeah, you can say that about almost any movie set indoors, frankly.
Because City of Lost Children's 185, and that still gives you a great big looking movie, but that with the scope it sort of confines you. I mean, this is shot Super 35, so they could have cropped it, but if it was shot spherical, I think it probably would have. I don't know, maybe a bit better.
I've probably complained about this before, but I really don't like huge. I mean, this isn't. What is this? Is it 235?
Yeah, 235 to 1.
It might even be a bit. I don't know.
Might be 240. I don't know,
but unless you're David Lean and shooting scenes, or if you're in the desert or if you're in outer space, 2001, Sergio Leone movies, they're for me they're the only ones that should be in a ratio like 235. And I mean, like Stanley Kubrick shot almost everything in I think 176, or it was certainly if not shot projected, or 166, and and obviously his early films were 145 or whatever, the in the old school 1950s square shaped screen movies. It was only Spartacus and 2001 that he ever shot, and even Eyes Wide Shut, in an age when no one else would have shot a movie like that, 166, and it's because that's closer to our natural field of vision, apparently. So it makes complete sense. It's kind of going, I don't know. It's empty effect almost, to my mind, going super widescreen.
Wasn't this is a great moment, isn't it? Because Sigourney does actually get it in the basket, but because of the aspect ratio, it's cut off. But you can. There's a great moment where Ron Perlman nearly breaks character to react to like fucking hell,
Well, he does, doesn't he? I mean, in the documentary they talk about this, don't they? That he immediately reacts, going, "Oh my god, wow!" and like unbelievably, she'd made the shot, but then he effectively ruined the take, and they had to cut away much sooner than they wanted to, or something.
Yeah. So I think I presume on the original Super 35 frame, you can probably see it go in, but it's kind of cropped, isn't it? It's weird in this one where, with her hairstyle and makeup, and it's weird. I always get the sense that Michael Jackson was trying to copy her face.
Funnily enough, I've often thought that about the whatever the new alien's called, the white one we get at the end, with its turn up nose. It's always reminded me of Michael Jackson.
I can't. Play with me. It's like, oh god, no. Oh, this is it, the iconic moment.
Yeah.
I'm Batman.
Yeah, they cut right away from it. Yeah, the second it goes in, they cut.
Yeah, because you could still someone say, well, someone caught it at the top but then threw it in.
Yeah,
they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I always thought that was bullshit, to be honest. But then finally got around to watching the documentary, and they've got the the behind the scenes footage of it.
Yeah. So even like the stuff in space, like how it's lit, it's very unique. Because I know they said they lit it with black, black lights. It's just mad. It's quite an extra level of darkness to everything. It's like any like spotlights of light, on stuff.
And that would have been a huge pain in the ass as well, because they're all model shots, aren't they? The spaceships are, it's not CG, they're models, and you'd never normally use the same, or seldom use the same stock and emulsion and so on for models that you would but because of the silver element, I can't remember what it was ENR or DNR.
Yeah,
I can't remember the
like
process.
that,
yeah. I'd never heard that term.
KDNR,
for it before,
something like that.
Some sort of radio station. And this guy is in everything Genet has ever directed. Pinot. He's a really lovely actor, I think.
He does a lot with his face, doesn't he?
Mm. He knows what his selling point is.
Yeah, and he speaks very good English. Because when you see him in interviews, it's like, oh wow, because I think Jean Pierre, he pretends he knows English. He says,
yeah.
So.
He didn't speak a word of it on set, did he? Apparently, he had to have everything translated. He speaks English now, but at the time,
yeah. Because I remember he said the reviews where the French loved the movie because they loved the idea of a French director making a big Hollywood film and had a lot of respect for him. And but he said the reviews were kind of like the same on each side. He goes, I don't want to read the bad reviews. I read the good ones, which is fair enough. You don't want just to read the nice ones. Well, you saw early on when the eggs were in front of the essentially the hostages, I suppose. The most gooey eggs you've ever seen. They look all kind of like. In the original one, it always looked like a big solid thing that it had weight to it. But now it kind of looks like a runny egg, it's about to come out of. And this stuff here is kind of strange, when, the aliens figure out that they'll get frozen, or like a burst of kind of what's that stuff they use to freeze things?
Yeah,
the stuff that's in T2 and Time Cop, They figure it out, but then they sort of think, oh, okay, well, if we attack our friend, he'll melt through the floor. It's kind of, you're seeing stuff aliens do we haven't seen before, but it also felt, I don't know, like the aliens weren't really a thing in this anymore. They were just kind of more like cattle or something like that. It felt
That's
like
a good point. Yeah, they don't feel as integral. Certainly, and I mean, there's a lot of time focused on the new alien, but not until the last act, and even then, only the second half of it. You're right, yeah, there's not an awful lot of alien business, for want of a better term.
Yeah, but you get these kind of great shots of them, bits of interaction with the scientists, but I don't know, it felt like them themselves weren't really a threat that much anymore.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I don't know, it's an odd one.
I'm not convinced Genet really understood what he was trying to do in a lot of ways. I don't think he really understood genre in the typical traditional sense. So maybe, there is a ball drop there, because it isn't, like we're saying, it's unpleasant.
Yeah.
In lots of places. And there's one scene in particular I've always really struggled with, actually. But no, it's never scary, to my mind. There's nothing remotely scary or even tense. It's
just gross.
Yeah, just gross.
And that's how they sort of thought, well, okay, because this was an 18, and it's still an 18. I think it will remain an 18 for years to come, because it's, it goes a little bit, above and beyond what you expect from, say, a 15.
But I think most kids would be fine with this kind of thing. Certainly more so than the first Alien, or I don't know.
I think the first Alien will certainly really freak them out. I think it will stick around in their head for longer. Well, this would just be like, oh, that's gross, but you probably forget about it. I mean, stuff like this, these shots where you've got a massive wide and you can see the scale of the ship. This is all incredible. I love all this stuff here. But it is more about Ripley, isn't it? It's more about her sort of figuring out who she is now, and which is kind of fine. But it's interesting once you sort of realise that the aliens don't really see much of a focus in this. They're just kind of there. and because they were so integral with the other ones, weren't they? Where especially the third one, it all relied on just this alien, this one alien. I think I suppose when you've got multiple aliens, it sort of maybe somewhat dilutes it a little bit, their threat. Because that's the thing with aliens, but they get mowed down with the pulsar rifle. But I suppose the big reveal was the Queen, So
Yeah. But I suppose also here they're in a controlled environment, aren't they? The humans have until they don't. The humans have control over what's happening, which they never do in 3 or 2, for example. It all goes pear-shaped through. But here they've been introduced to an environment that's designed to contain them, and even though it obviously doesn't work, it means that there's no real threat to speak of at the moment.
Did you look into some of the other directors who were considered? Because I know Danny Boyle was quite close.
Yeah, I believe Danny Boyle and David Cronenberg were close, but I don't know of any others.
I think maybe Paul W. Sanderson might have been in the running, because he had, success with Mortal Kombat, and but also going with the French director, it's probably an idea at the time because Luc Besson was doing so well.
Yeah,
with his kind of like The Fifth Element, which was the same year, and also he had made it big with Leon. But I suppose they thought, well, let's get directors from Europe who are kind of visually interesting, doing some new stuff, and it made sense, And it was like the French directors were sort of getting more popular during that decade.
Genet was was a kind of cresting a wave at that point as well. His career was he was very well thought of at that exact moment. It didn't really last, I don't think, but with the exception of Amelie. But
yeah, Amelie, that was really popular, wasn't it? Oscar pleaser, wasn't it?
I hate that effect of that blade going through her hand. It's so unconvincing. What do you think of Sigourney Weaver in this? Because I'm in two minds about her presence here, because she's such a great actress and she's playing a different character to, effectively this is a different character, which is really interesting. But it's inescapable just how much she's in it for the money this time round, and isn't really invested in a way that's hard to identify or to sort of point to, but
she seems disconnected from the movie, and that maybe just down to the performance that she doesn't know who she is, which again sort of goes sort of two ways. One, you can kind of buy into that she's disconnected, or she's just kind of not really into it. There's always there's a point in the movie where throughout this film she seems like she's not being truthful or not, talking like a normal self. It always just feels like she's just like a bit spaced out. And then by the end she's like Ripley again.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, I thought you were dead. Oh yeah, I get that a lot. That's kind of
exactly. Yeah, I know. Exactly.
The tone of her performance shifts.
The first half, it's like she's keeping her powder very dry. She's not revealing anything to anyone. She's got more information about herself than anyone around her does for the whole first half of the movie, and is quiet and is different. And then it's just suddenly, oh yeah, it's the finale. I'll be Ripley again now.
Yeah, and she only gets that sort of switcheroo when she encounters the newborn. She tries to escape, and she's like,
we'll get onto that later.
Yeah, and the soldier heads that kind of they overreact quite a bit now. Where they think, it's a conspiracy that they're trying to steal information or something.
Yeah. I've always loved that. Ron Perlman, man. I mean, it's like, what a strange career trajectory he's had. It's because he wasn't that well known at this point, really, was he? I don't think he was anyway. But he's just such a great performer.
He's a brilliant character actor. You just fit him into everything, and he kind of works. I think it's like the sort of directors, the great visualists, always sort of. It's like Guillermo del Toro. He sort of became like a big firm favourite of Ron Perlman, didn't he, for Hellboy?
Yeah.
And then he pop up in I think Pacific Rim. He's sort of I don't know, a director's actor. He's always reliable.
You can slot him in.
Yeah. I suppose he found success as an actor, as I would guess, at a slightly older age.
Yeah, I can't think what he's in when he's looking young. That's a good point, actually.
Beauty and the Beast. But he's a beast in it.
I've never seen that. I've always thought he should play Tom Waits one day. I think I say that every time Ron Perlman comes up, but he really should have played Tom Waits before he got too old.
I still want a third Hellboy from him, but I think he's too old to wear all the makeup.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like that, actually.
Brad Dourif, you know what I mean? He's another great genre actor, isn't he?
So many great genre character actors just slotted into the right roles.
All it needs is Jeffrey Combs, isn't it?
Yeah.
That would have been great. Just dialing into his performance from The Frighteners, that would make my day.
He'd have been good in the Winona Ryder role, actually.
Oh man, definitely. But he wouldn't play, but it would just be really weird and quirky, which will kind of make this film like totally bizarre.
Yeah,
even more weird.
Like this bit, mate. Speaking of tonally bizarre, this
is.
scene always makes me laugh as well because every time it happens, I expect to hear one of them whispering to the other one.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we're going to do. Right? Have you seen that?
Yeah. He's stabbed him in the chest. He's like, no, fuck off, leave me
No,
alone.
I don't want to be. Why don't you get stabbed in the chest? One of us has got to get stabbed in the chest, and I had the idea. Why didn't you? Oh, it's nasty.
Oh, it's proper like custard, isn't it? When you see them explode down, it's like chunks of custard and like spaghetti. And it's like
Creme anglaise, I think we should call
Creme
it.
anglaise,
If
yeah.
it's directed by a Frenchman.
creme brulee. Oh, he's such an idiot. Like, he just goes in there. Who would move the key? Let's leave the key in.
Too late, and now you're fucked.
Yeah. They're proper shiny, aren't they, in this one, the xenomorphs?
Yeah, I much prefer that look of them to the... Well, I suppose they've always been relatively similar, but I didn't like the ridges that Cameron added. That's one of the few... That smooth look is... Yeah, it's better for me.
Classic shot with seeing aliens, this and Romulus.
Winona Ryder I've not seen her in anything for a long time. Somehow I haven't rewatched things she was famous for or whatever, and I couldn't get over her eyes. Just have so much to say for themselves. This is the scene where initially he didn't have a shirt on. But I mean, how can anyone say that this is too serious? Joss Whedon is saying it should have been more of a should have been more light-hearted and humorous than a movie with shots like that.
God damn, it's just a great effect, you know. And it's just like, when I watched this, I was like, oh, a time cop, you know, because the guy gets frozen and Van Damme's like, have a nice day. He's like flying kicks his arm off. Look at that, it's so dribbly. Jesus, man.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's why Winona Ryder was cast, or well, she was probably cast because she was a megastar at the time and all kinds of good reasons. But for someone who is going to play a non-human, to have eyes that are like ultra-human, it's a way into...
She's got those sort of anime eyes, hasn't she? Like an animated character.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rob, you have seen Stranger Things, right?
Oh, that's true, actually, yeah. Yeah,
Well, there you go.
Things, yeah.
She's in there.
About that.
And she's going to be in Beetlejuice 2.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm excited for that, actually.
she still gets gigs despite stealing stuff. You know,
I was thinking that when in the documentary when she talks about the scene in the water, she says, this is the worst experience of my entire life was filming that water scene. I thought, yeah, that was before you got arrested for shoplifting, wasn't it? On the front page of every newspaper in America.
She's like stealing dresses or something like that, you know. You also get a sense that the aliens have come to get her to take her to the Queen, because she gives up, doesn't she? Ripley does, when she realises the Queen's in pain. You know, so weird. Yeah, she's still connected to him, but she's trying to somewhat distance herself from it. But
trying to work out what she is and who she cares about, which she does a really good job of, I suppose.
It's pretty gross when the alien jumps in the escape pod and cuts all those guys up, because you can just see the blood just go.
Yeah, that's a great idea for a scene. The way it's all played out as well is brilliant.
Yeah, it's good. And also because he's can't feel feel his legs. He gets the acid on him, and he touches it. It's like ah, and then this weird shot Jean Pierre does where the camera just goes towards him, and he's like going ah, screaming, which will get used in the trailer. Which is the trailer itself is also pretty awesome.
It's nicely established as well in the early scenes, isn't it? With Ron Perlman dropping the knife onto his leg, and I
he
like
can't feel nothing.
Little callbacks like that, or establishing those details is.
Oh yeah.
So, acid for blood. Would that be a good thing or a pain in the arse? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
you'd have a lot of fun with it.
The acid doesn't seem as intense though as the alien, the xenomorph one that sort of cuts through things like butter, Because they've now created a sort of hybrid with Ripley, because it makes it difficult to what else to do with it, like moving forward. I think that's why they sort of after the fourth one they're like, what are we going to do?
I know it's a dead end of a movie, isn't it? And it's really quite cynical. All the factors involved in the coming. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. It's a business, but like David Giler and Walter Hill, who I think deserve a lot more credit for Alien in general, the Alien franchise, than they get. They were against it. It was entirely a Fox project, wasn't it? I think Brandywine really had much to do with it.
Giler said slightly based on an idea he'd come up with, but I think his idea was just like, oh, they'll just clone her. That was it.
Yeah. We've got to have him back. We've got to have her back. But like the way that Sigourney Weaver got involved, we've already mentioned, she's clearly in it for the money, was apparently paid $11 million, as I'm sure you've read. But she says things like, I didn't want to make another Alien movie. I had no interest in making another Alien movie. And then when I heard they were going to do Alien versus Predator, I started thinking maybe, and I thought, well, it shouldn't just be about Ripley. This Ripley's had her story. Let's make this about someone. So there's all.
Well, she thought the AVP idea was terrible.
Yeah, she kind of like I think at one point anyway, during promotion of this movie, I think I got the feeling she was trying to sort of say, I came back, one of the reasons I came back is because I didn't want it to go in this ridiculous direction. Now she's quite open about the fact that they just drove a dump truck full of money up to her house and emptied it on her front lawn, as she says herself, which is why she made it.
And then the bit when the guy gets hit in the neck, it looks like their neck, doesn't it? And he pulls out I don't know, it looks like part of the brain. It also looks like a piece of like sweet and sour chicken he's pulled out and just gone. But she said, what was it, come to the underwater sequence, that she was petrified of doing it. She didn't want to go underwater. And she goes, I know I'm expensive, but I can't do this. She wasn't willing to do it, but she did eventually do it. And because they said a bunch of the actors had to train for weeks. I couldn't do that. I'm not a confident swimmer, so I'd be like, nope. But if you're getting 10 million, I'll be like, yeah.
If you were paid that much, I think you'd get over that quite quickly.
I think you probably would, but
I was really confused by it. It's such a typical, the vibe I get from Jeunet compared to the vibe I get from Cameron. I imagine that scene, that underwater scene, had Cameron shot it, everyone involved would have been trained to within an inch of their life, and Gale Ann Hurd would have accepted no shortcuts, no compromises. Safety would have been absolutely everything. And I do get the impression that Jeunet just kind of went, there you go. Because they spent like a couple of weeks training, but most of them weren't certified divers. And it's like, it takes 4 days to get certified as a diver. A couple of hours a day. It's not I'm a certified diver, believe it or not, and I can barely swim. It's not, it's like, how can you not have had time? How can they not? And
you don't do lengths, do you, Rob? You do depths.
Exactly. I just think. But like a couple of them talked about how they feel like they really nearly died, and I know that it's kind of, if any water-based scene in any movie, someone has to have a story about how they nearly drowned. But you do get the impression they were actually telling the truth in this case. Like Ron Perlman smashed his head, didn't he, and knocked himself out or something, and one of the guys on his team, I can't remember who now, was had a similar story about nearly drowning. Sigourney Weaver didn't, because she was in a stage play in New York, didn't have time to attend any of the training. So she literally had no training whatsoever. But Winona Ryder nearly drowned as a child and refused to ever go underwater again, but was made to do it and freaked out completely. And it really feels like a bit of a scattershot approach to, like, get them certified, man. It's not difficult.
Do you think they would have had more stress though dealing with Cameron for that? Because like The Abyss, that was famously known for its troubled production, and Cameron just like going underwater.
That's Cameron demanding everything in the moment, though, isn't it? I genuinely believe that everyone, he would have had everyone trained up, properly trained, properly equipped, knowing everything that they could know. It's a different way of working, though, isn't it? It's also the European way compared to the American way. There's the studio must have been terrified of being sued for one thing by someone who did what, and Genet coming from Paris, and it's not going to be thinking like that.
This is where we see some of the early shots of the CG, where you see the alien kind of walking in a sort of past camera. I have to look into who did the visual effects again, but I don't think it wasn't like an ILM type thing. I think it was maybe a different company. It wasn't Digital Domain, was it?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so this sort of it always looks a bit too reflective, like it's made
awful,
out of.
Isn't it?
It's not great CG, is it?
That shot a moment ago of the alien kind of taking a step away, the lower half. Again, one of my bugbears. It's just so overlit compared to everything else in the frame.
It was Mass Illusion, VFX, I think it was. And I think there's a bunch of other companies. I think it's like one of those sort of, or VIFX as well. So yeah, it's kind of like you break it down, don't you, for different shots and go who's competent at doing what type of CG. So, but yeah, I mean they do generally keep it to a minimum. I mean the CG during the underwater sequence is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I've never understood actually. Those aliens appear to be designed for underwater use, as it were. They seem to. Are they meant to be just normal, generic?
Yeah, xenomorphs.
First movie alien xenomorphs.
Yeah, but because it's supposed to be the most perfect organism, isn't it? So you can swim, you can do this and that. You know what I mean? So, and he can survive in space.
True.
For those who've seen Romulus.
unless they enter space through a little hole about that big, in which case.
No.
Love that shot. Love that shot at the end.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible.
So grotesque.
Oh, it makes me upset as well.
I know, because they go so heavy. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but they go so heavy on the sympathy in the creature's face.
It's the noise it makes. It's like this like a little baby, and just like goes. So I love all this camera work here. It's brilliant because you've got all the players in it, in one of those kind of wide shots, and there's a lot of kind of turning around to camera, like especially the shot with Winona Ryder when she sees the alien for the first time. Ron Perlman, I'll get you off, but maybe not the ship.
Yeah, it's not flashily made necessarily, although there's a lot of striking shots and a lot of striking zooms, as you've mentioned. There's some really good basic film work going on.
Yeah. I mean, this is production design by Nigel Phelps. I mean, I recall the studio was so impressed with the set that they just invite people over to see it, and they're trying to film, and they've got all the executives walking around just trying to show off what the latest alien's going to look like. And Phelps has done some massive movies like Transformers sequels, Pirates of the Caribbean, World War Z.
Wow,
a lot of bad blockbusters, but hey, he's still doing stuff, which is great. I think he'd also done. I think he might have done Judge Dredd. He did. There's a bit of Judge Dredd in this.
The good one or the stupid one?
The stupid one.
Oh, right.
But the stupid one looks great.
Do you know what? I don't think I've seen it since back in the day.
Man, well, this Stallone one, look at these corridors. Very Judge Dredd in areas, Well, this is like, he would have shot this maybe a year and a half apart of doing Dread to this. So I think there's quite a bit of crossover.
There's hardly any colour in that frame outside the skin tones.
Yeah, it's a kind of unique style, isn't it? It's just this. Well, do you think it's something we'd come to see from other filmmakers, sort of desaturate the image quite a lot? And Zack Snyder was sort of kind of used that, wouldn't he? You know, that approach, but not in a. I think his approach is more of a sort of digital grading effect, where this was kind of more in the chemical process.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes it kind of visually quite unique.
And also the practical, the set designs and the costumes are very carefully colour coordinated, aren't they?
You're expecting Santa Claus? Yeah. Which is some of Caro's design, isn't it? And some of what... Because Caro and Jean-Pierre had obviously worked together, and Mark Caro didn't want to work with the Hollywood system. He was very much his own thing. He didn't want to sell out, essentially, and apparently quite a stubborn guy, but very French, I suppose. But he'd done some sketches for them, which Bob Ringwood would kind of, not be fully inspired by, was sort of say, okay, this is the direction we kind of want to go, and use that. I know Bob Ringwood was annoyed because Mark Caro would get credited in the making of book and he wouldn't. It really pissed him off.
Yeah, and he only spent like a few days in Hollywood or something, didn't he? Just doing some sketches. So, yeah, because Fox offered the project to he and Jeunet as a double act, and yeah, Caro said no thanks. Non merci.
Yeah, Bob Ringwood's done some, he was the guy who designed most of the superhero costumes. He'd do Captain America, the Albert Pyun one. He'd do Tim Burton's Batman. He did all the Batman films. He did Dune.
Albert Pyun's Captain America and Tim Burton's Batman suits were designed by the same man. Wow.
Yeah, man, yeah.
Oh, Christ, he didn't do the red skeleton thing, did he, in Captain America?
Have done. I don't know.
That's one of the worst bits of character design.
I think that's not costume, is it? That's makeup.
Well,
Yeah,
I guess.
I think Bob Ringwood did have a stroke, I think. That's why he's not really... I don't think he's working anymore. Retired, I think. Perhaps. Oh, he was consulted on The Flash. Okay. The last thing he did was Troy. So, yeah, he's obviously had health problems, which is a shame.
I worked on Troy.
Oh, yeah, but you say your friend had some fixations on Brad Pitt. And, found the nude scenes or something,
There's a bit of 35mm print of Brad Pitt's Todger, which has been run a lot of times in a screening room in central London. Was it Conrad Hall? Conrad Hall was in charge of the VFX, wasn't he? Yeah, because he was not at all convinced by Jeunet when he was announced. He was like, he'd never heard of him and wasn't impressed. And
then he saw his work. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you think this could have been just a fourth Alien movie without the need to bring back Sigourney Weaver?
Yeah, I think. But yeah, it's
even though we had this kind of hybrid alien, we could have just had the military have stumbled across something in space that could be a xenomorph and just do it from there, and not have to spend a huge amount of money trying to bring her back. And again, once we brought her back, we're kind of weird position where we can't really continue on because it kind of has this weird ending where you don't know where to go with it from that point, because she finally gets back to Earth, and what you see in the extended cut is that they land in Paris and everything's been destroyed. I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's like, because Ron Perlman says, his character, Earth, what a shithole, this is the horrible bit, isn't it? This is
yeah. So this is the scene I mentioned earlier that it gives me the wiggies. I'm not good at deformity and stuff like that.
Yes, when she's like, "Kill me," it's a horrible.
Yeah,
moment.
that really is that's too much for me, to be honest.
It's if South Park wonderfully spoofed it, If you ever see the
Yeah.
episode with Towley,
Yeah.
there's multiple Towleys. He's like, kill me. It's so funny. And they make a really buff Towley, don't they? So.
I don't know if it's a reference to it, but there's a really similar moment in a Lindsay Anderson movie. Do you know If, the movie If?
Yes.
Lindsay Anderson, yeah. So that was the first of a 3-part kind of loose series starring that character Malcolm McDowell plays. I forget his name now. The second one is Lucky Man, which is an absolute masterpiece. I love that movie. And in that he's like locked in this weird hospital, and he pulls back the covers to see and it's this hideous, deformed sort of person, half bred with a pig or something like that. And it says something like "kill me" or But and I've often wondered if that's a direct reference.
Maybe, yeah. But you could also have that sort of mad coincidence because she's the 8th clone, so they would have had loads of hiccups, but they're still keeping her alive.
I know
it's not a good moment to see. And it's a very moving moment because Sigourney does it wonderfully in her reaction, and she's so pissed off and upset.
Considering they had initially planned to kill 8 once she'd served her purpose, it does beg the question: why have they kept all these? Why are they going out of their way to keep this one alive? It does feel a bit like it's just here for a horrible moment like this.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, this is horror, isn't it? This is the horror element.
This is why David Cronenberg was thought of.
Yeah, for sure. I think it would have been more grotesque. You think if it was Cronenberg? Do you think
that wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah, a Cronenberg doing this, or anyone doing this without Ripley, as you mentioned. It's because she is more of a handicap than she's great and we love seeing her, so she's not more of a handicap. But there are problems stemming from her involvement in this that are never quite overcome, and it'd be interesting to imagine what it might have been without her.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you got that sort of problem where everyone loves Sigourney Weaver. If someone goes, Sigourney Weaver's in it, you're like, I'm going to watch that. Because I don't think she's ever given a bad performance. She's great in everything. There's no faults from her, but it just sometimes creates complications down to wanted to keep some continuity when it was kind of that continuity had come to an end in the third one. But yeah, she's the only way they were going to get the xenomorph at this point in the timeline was that if they had to clone her, she'd still have the embryo in her, or the baby queen alien.
And it's fine. It doesn't really matter. It's not real life, but it doesn't. Is it just me, or does that make absolutely no sense whatsoever?
No, it makes sense. This is just like this. It's bad taste.
But if you clone, no, I mean the cloning
the
cloning. So in order to get the xenomorph, they don't clone the xenomorph; they clone the host of the xenomorph, and the xenomorph is inside her.
That makes sense because that's all they've got is her DNA. But
her DNA wouldn't. Why would her DNA feature alien DNA at that point?
Okay.
She was a host, that's in
the
same way like did John Hurt's DNA contain alien DNA in the first film? Once it at what point of becoming the host of it? It's not how DNA works. It's not.
Well, that's what Kane says. No, what Ian Holmes' character, the android said, he calls it Kane's son. So it's kind of in a scientific way, it does have his DNA. It just to create the grown version of the xenomorph.
Well, the xenomorph could have the host's DNA,
right?
Potentially, but
yeah,
how could the host have the xenomorph's DNA? Like a child has their parents' genetic information. It's not, the flow doesn't go the other way. I don't know.
We need to get a scientist in the podcast, right?
Or just accept it doesn't matter.
You just have to accept that, they've cloned her and it's the same Ripley we saw from number 3. That at that point in time, essentially. Well, they've got it from a baby. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
It's too fun an idea to let reality get in the way of it.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like, what? How many years in the future? Like 300 to 400 years in the future from now, or whatever. So, yeah, they could do it with technology, can't they?
Technology.
Technology. Here you go. How'd you do it? We need to use technology.
Technology and strobe lights. That's all you need.
It's got to copy and paste its DNA. Yeah, that's a bit too much flickering, I think, really. That would annoy me. Film for too long.
Scenes like this in theatres, I can find too intense quite often, because obviously the whole room's flashing then, isn't it? This guy, I love this performance. This guy's brilliant.
Yeah. Get away from me! Get away from me! But he was again interviewed, and he was sort of said he was quite excited to see the trailer or the teaser trailer for the film, because he had the last line in the movie, didn't he? Who are you? But he's mostly deployed as a TV actor, isn't he? I think he's
I can't place him now.
Yeah, he's in tons of stuff. I think he's in pretty much most TV shows he's been in.
Yeah. No, I've just pictured him being interviewed now. I recognise him in his older, longer-haired interview state. It's uncanny how similar this setup is to Serenity when you think about it. It's essentially Serenity or Firefly. I assume you've seen one or the other of them.
I've seen Serenity and maybe a couple of episodes of Firefly. I know that show had a massive fan base who I don't think went to see the movie. I remember the film didn't perform that well.
It's a classic example of the fans all going, make us a movie, make us a movie, make us a movie, and then half of them not bothering to see it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that setup is kind of like a softer version of this crew. They're essentially pirates, really, or smugglers, or
That's
what
right.
have you.
Yeah.
Operating in a world much like this one.
Well, he's Leland Orser. That's the actor. He's in 7, the Bone. He's the people haven't seen Bone Collector. Spoilers, but he's the main bad guy. And he's in Taken. He's in quite a few movies actually. So yeah, he's not really a TV actor. He's both. He's good in everything. There you go.
He's Mr. Character Actor.
Yeah, that's what you want. But they've got the makeup on Winona Ryder. She does look a bit like a porcelain doll.
Yeah, that's. I think her physicality is part of the problem because she just looks so delicate. Part of my problem with her, her casting, I should say.
Because the androids often had strength. They could beat you up. They were stronger. And they were quite, it's kind of deceptive, But she's, designed to be, I suppose, more of a infiltrator because you wouldn't expect her none the wiser. Because she's petite and small and delicate, and all she can do is, I don't know, communicate with Mother, whatever it is, the system they've got. Sigourney's performance here is brilliant.
I just love this guy's face as well. He's got such a brilliant, stressed and worried look. I'm its mother.
But yeah, she's kind of acting like she's proud of what she's done.
Yeah. I mean, that was a perfect line delivery of a great line, and you can totally see why it's there, but it just doesn't fit with the rest of her character and what she's going through, and so we got to have that moment because big American movie, great moment,
and great trailer fodder. You'd be like, oh, that's good. I need to see that again.
400 years in the future, you'd thought that wheelchairs might have got smaller and more convenient rather than larger and less
More
effective.
We've gone from 4 wheels to 6.
We managed to make it absolutely enormous, but still incapable of going up a step.
There's no ramps in the future, is there?
Apparently, they had to put milk in this water because it was too clear. So they had to.
Really?
They put a few hundred litres of milk in there, which you'd think would go off or something.
Oh, it stink, wouldn't it? After a while.
I'll tell you, a weird nugget I uncovered reading about this was that the Serenity, when they shot Serenity, they built the ship. I forget what it's called. Oh, it's called Serenity, isn't it? Or Firefly, one or the other. But they actually built that set on top of this tank.
Really?
So with all the connections, that it ended up being coincidentally.
That's mad. Well, it's Fox Studios, isn't it? So
Yeah,
it's a Fox production. That was the thing where I think we may have noticed before, when you've got a Fox film, they're bringing a lot of the players from their TV shows to sort of be supporting roles or things like that, because they were under contract, I presume. I don't think in the typical studio way of the golden age of Hollywood, but they often see like people who are in 24, they'll be in a movie made by the same distributor. And
yeah. And same with the series as well, isn't it? They're often, you can identify, there's a thread that runs through, what is it, like the X-Files and 24, and
yeah,
you get the same actors cropping up in them all the time. Apparently they had to wait for access to this set to build this, because they built this tank, didn't they? There wasn't one in Hollywood big enough or something. So they built this tank, but they had to wait to get on the set to do it because Rupert Murdoch's wife had commandeered all the sets on the lot to make some promo for some charity she was interested in that week or something.
It's mad, isn't it? I love this shot here when you see the alien explode underwater.
Oof.
Oh, that's really
Sound
good.
Effects.
Yeah. There's a great little shot coming up here where you see, like, I think it's where Ripley jumps up, or like, and the alien goes underneath and comes towards camera. It's kind of like a shark or something, you know. I still get the sense that I presume the Xenomorph are still going to try and get Ripley to take her back to the Queen. That's what they eventually do when she sort of gives up.
Yeah, I guess. It's a fabulous shot of her coming up as well, of Ripley's face, assessing what's happened all still.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
That's really well done. I mean, this is all done by the second unit guy, wouldn't it? Who was, specialised in filming underwater. It's like those guys in the Bond films, who do those great...
The aerial shots. And yeah, you've always got your expert pros, haven't you, to...
Sometimes looks better than, the stuff they do above ground. It's like, fucking hell, how'd they do that? Oh God. It doesn't really make sense why they would build, this kind of nest above the water. What would this be? Just like extra dribble that's kind of gone hard? I don't know.
It's part and parcel of this movie, really, isn't it? Here's a neat little idea. We'll use it, whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is the stuff of nightmares for a lot of people. If you're not a comfortable swimmer or you don't like the water, that must be pure. Everyone's got their own little phobia. I can really see that freaking people out.
Yeah. Because this would also imply this area there should be a queen nearby, because she would have laid those eggs, wouldn't she? And then sauntered off somewhere,
Well, because we learn later, don't we, that the Queen has taken on some of Ripley's human biological possibilities and is now birthing aliens directly rather than laying eggs.
Well,
is that
this doesn't really make sense, because she's supposed to be making eggs, which is clear that she's done, but then she's kind of evolved to have a womb, and then
that's
one.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, if we later on learn that the Queen is now birthing directly rather than laying eggs, why are there eggs there? Or does she lay eggs and then continue to evolve? After.
Yeah, because it all, as we know, with the sort of the time frame was when someone gets impregnated. In the first film, it was over a number of hours. It was, it would kind of kick in. Maybe over a day, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember with the time with Kane.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long he's unconscious for.
Yeah, and then it sort of speeds up just down to the convenience of the story, and the filmmakers think, because in Romulus it's quite quick, and this it seems a little bit longer. And in 3 it's longer because we know she's taking a medication to sort of help her. That's may delay stuff, but AVP series, it happens like super quick.
Yeah.
And
it happens when it needs to.
Yeah. That's a good shot. Oof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is about the only sequence I remember being really like, well, not the only sequence, but I remember being blown away by. To be honest, I thought that was just so effective back in the day.
It's really well staged, and when you see I think they use it in the trailer as well, the shot of the alien jumping out of the water. When you see it sort of jump up and grabs onto the ladder, it kind of always to me looked like it was made of glass. It was just too. They went a bit overboard with the reflective nature of it all. I think it's just showing off what they could do, I suppose. And you were saying that sometimes they get a bit too obsessed with the details of trying to show off what they can do, but ultimately pushes it a little bit too far, so it doesn't actually quite blend.
Oh no, she must be dead. This is his Burke moment, isn't it, basically? It's exactly the same little routine.
Come on, Ripley, use your alien strength.
I tell you who I like in this as well, actually. Is it Kim Flowers? Is that her name? The Michael Wincott's girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Type.
Yeah.
That's a really good character, considering she was not given much to do, really. I love the way she responds to his death. It seems really believable and viable.
Yeah. It's strange now seeing the guy with the dual pistols, like the second in command of the Betty, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure who he is, actually.
I'm not sure. But he, he gets some acid on his face, but then sort of gives up. We think, well, he's not dead. He's not like... Because he starts unclipping himself, and then he just commits suicide. I think, well, you could have carried on, to help the team.
Is there a... No, we haven't established that he's like really vain or something, have we?
It's Gary Dorden, isn't it, the actor? Yeah, he's in quite a bit of TV.
Unless he's just doing it to save Pino. This is great.
Yeah, I love this shot. It's a really good shot as well. When you see like the camera sort of pans back, you see the look at that. It sort of pans over everything. That's good.
I see, but man, if they'd done this, there's about 15 shots there probably since he leant back on the ladder. That could have been 2 shots, and it would have been awesome. Brilliant.
That's what you'd do though if you leaned up sort of big spider in front of you.
I think in the novelisation, apparently, there's a big subplot involving him being terrified of insects and arachnids and so on, and that's the only bit of it that made it into the movie.
Come on, you can get that alien hand off your foot. Just wiggle your foot. It'll come off.
Yeah, it's covered in slime. You'd think it would be impossible for it to grip anything.
So much lube. It's like...
It's so touching.
I forgot about him, because the camera didn't actually cover him. The guy's got the alien in his chest for quite a bit, so just sort of he's still hanging on. Oh, he's still there. My God, it's Winona Ryder. She's alive, and she's oozing semi-skimmed milk, maybe not full cream, I suppose.
Yeah, you could have done with a better line than that, really, for you.
Yeah, this way. Yeah. Come on, God damn it. You got body armor on.
That's the sleaziest inane question I've ever heard somehow. Is that you or your armor?
Yeah, very milky. Let's put my fingers in there. Yeah, here we go.
Horrible. Why does it have to be that colour? That's a nice line, isn't it? No human being's that humane.
Yeah, yeah. Second gen Android. So they're more petite. Don't show any strength. And do a lot of whinging. They do a lot of complaining.
Yeah.
That's a lot of complaining.
But they can really hold their drink.
Yes. Drinking what? Basically battery acid? I do like the idea one of the soldiers stuck with them. He sort of turned against his superior quite quickly. You know.
It's more fodder as well, isn't it? They need people to get killed.
But also you need someone who's knows the whereabouts of the ship.
The layout and
to guide them. You know.
Okay, Mr. Exposition.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, he starts having a bit of heartburn in a minute. He's like, oof, oof. He's like, I'm okay. He's like,
I'm such a fan of that guy who's got it in him, though. He should be in every shot all the time because he's always doing a really good face.
doesn't she like pull out a mole?
Yeah.
That was it.
Every time I've seen this movie, I've thought, how does she put that bit of string back in?
Oh god, it'd be a nightmare. It's like trying to thread a needle. It's like, it won't go through.
But then, you feed it all back in. You're still going to have a bit. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Here we go. Moly. Maybe she's got like a sort of a rectangle on her arm, and she unplugs it and you can put a SCART cable in there.
Yeah, or maybe her other arm's got a mole with a device that you can pull out that enables you to push it back in. Anything's possible. What if every one of her moles has something exciting hidden behind it? Sounded really sleazy, didn't it? I've heard that back.
Rob means like USB inputs and, HDMI. There we go. Bit of heartburn.
No, I'm all right.
Has anyone got any Rennie? You can just like drink something that's really strong to get it. You know what I mean?
He's lit from below again. So everyone's lit from below half the time. Everyone's lit from below.
But the women, but Sigourney and Winona aren't. They're sort of, to sort of keep. And maybe it's sort of, if you shoot at certain angles, it just reveals everyone's massive eye bags and things like that. Hey, maybe you look younger, okay? It's like.
So, would you think this is one of the last big budget sci-fi movies to not include any kind of CGI spaceships? I wonder when there must be.
Starship Troopers used a lot of miniatures for the spaceships.
Yeah,
but I know there's like CGI to sort of when they break up and things like that. But they did make an effort to use a lot of in-camera stuff, despite the bugs being CG for the majority of it. It's a good question, actually. I know Fifth Element, they built a lot of the city you see as miniatures.
They're all from the same kind of era, aren't they? In my mind, anyway.
That sort of 96, 97, 98
Yeah.
period.
So what's that, like 2 or 3 years after Jurassic Park? But
yeah, I think the Phantom Menace was the big push to have the majority of the stuff in CG. You know, there's still miniatures in there though.
is there a lot of CG in Phantom Menaces though?
I thought it was all real. I thought it was all in camera.
Basically everything is CG apart from the matte paintings, which are just shit.
Because they built like Jabba's palace, that was all a miniature. You know, the big panoramic shots, all a miniature. But because it weirdly looks more digital because they've just gone over it with different adding stuff and grading it. It just ends up looking digital again. Like, ugh. You know. You go put that pasta back inside.
Yeah. It's really helpful. Thanks, Ripley. Feel much better now.
Looking a bit floppy.
Really needed that particular bit of pasta.
It's got one of those sort of circles of light they do on people's faces when they see their eyes.
It's incredibly soft and generous, isn't it? The lighting there.
Yeah.
Are they candles burning in the bottom left of the frame?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. This is very Alien 3, isn't it? And it's supposed to be a church, isn't it? They're in.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd never got that. Oh, yeah, there we go.
It's a big crucifix, yeah.
I pay attention, me. It's still not the best explanation for having candles on a space station, though, is it?
See, her moments with Winona Ryder here are really good. I love these little moments of dialogue. Because this is Ripley again. This is Ripley. This is not the person we saw earlier who was like, you know, all sort of unsure of herself or maybe keeping things to herself, you know what I mean?
She's slipped into mother mode and speaking to her like she does Newt.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
That was more slime.
That's a lot of dribble. Yeah.
It's at the point now where every time I see that guy, it just makes me smile. But it was originally going to be about, speaking of Newt, that was the original plan, wasn't it? I think to build the story around Newt being duplicated, being cloned. That's apparently why Joss Whedon was brought on the grounds that, you know, young girl sci-fi thing, he's good at writing them. Buffy or whatever.
Yeah, Buffy.
And then it was rejigged when they decided that it needed Ripley. It was rejigged. Yeah,
this one's very gothic, isn't it? Looking, you know, especially with the spaceship out. When you see the exterior, it's very sort of. It's like a. It feels like a castle or something.
Yeah, do you know what? I was just thinking how the interiors, all this sort of foggy, smoky business is making me think of Hammer.
What, Hammer Horror?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Don't know why, but...
It's a style that seems to sort of spread over the 90s, especially in like music videos. I think there's a sort of reoccurring kind of visual style and use of colour. I suppose it's not entirely unique to this film because Seven had a sort of similar process of its chemical design for its. This is very Giger. This is like something out of his book.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But you can't tell what's going on here. It's just a bunch of aliens, just all this one big orgy. I
never understood what that's meant to be, but it looks cool.
It looks cool, and she sort of sinks through it, doesn't she, into the nest.
Very strange and hard to fathom relationships between all the different parties involved in this. With Ripley, because obviously the white alien, the new alien, later on reacting to one mother, because it's effectively, I suppose, Ripley and the Queen are its parents. And it rejects the alien side of its family and embraces the human side, which I've never really known what the point they're trying to make there, or what that really achieves. Likewise, why is she suddenly
embracing it now.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah, the mother's in pain. That's why, because it's like that's her daughter, isn't it?
I guess
that connection there. She can hear them.
It's a bit. I don't know, maybe it makes sense, but it seems a bit confusing or wrong somehow for her to establish her in this mother role, sympathising with Winona Ryder's character, and then just switch that parental concern to something completely at the other end of the spectrum.
We know stuff that hasn't really been cut out to that extent. Where that would think, oh, okay, try and bridge these kind of emotional leaps of faith we have to make. It's never made entirely clear, is it, with her intentions and motives in this.
You just know. Maybe it was Caro, maybe it was Janae himself, maybe it was something. They came up with that image, with that idea of her writhing around, and so they wanted. That's cool. We'll have that. It's a movie full of that's cool. We'll do that moments.
Yeah.
Whether they make kind of cohesive sense or not, but it's schlock. It doesn't have. It's fine. Oh, no.
Oh, this bit's horrible as well, isn't it? When it's just the most extreme way for a chest burster sequence, isn't it? Because he grabs his head and puts it near his chest. It goes through his chest and through his head.
I'd forgotten about that, yeah.
It's awful, isn't it? I bet no one was, when I saw this in the cinema, no one was eating at this point, were they? When it happened. No, I'm not going to eat. To be honest, I would have scoffed most of my popcorn by now.
Yeah, luckily the really bad stuff's near the end. You don't want to be eating a hot dog when that pokes its way out of someone's face.
Or Doritos and dip or something. Nah, I don't want to eat that anymore. Oh God!
Yeah,
it's all like extreme angles, isn't it? Like on the face.
I love this stuff. I love this. Yes. This is Sam Raimi-esque.
It is. That is so Raimi. He just like clocks in one.
I love that guy.
Oh, this is horrible. And it goes down his... that is Raimi. That's Raimi.
Hello.
Oh! And he's still alive. Getting shot. God, he's taken more hits than Peter Weller in RoboCop, isn't he?
That is marvellous.
Oh God, this is a big like smeggy cave. Look at all that. Looks like he's covered in shit. They're all because now it's like he's saying that they're not. They've been left there for food, haven't they?
That's it. Yeah, this is when we learn that it's reproducing directly.
That would have creeped me out seeing this set. Oh.
The wheels have just completely come off now. I love it.
And Brad Dourif kind of doing his sort of Chucky voice.
This is why you cast Brad Dourif. It's for this moment, this scene, isn't it?
The Queen's got all fat. I don't see the Queen moving in this film at all. Because all you saw early on was a wonderful shot, which we didn't mention, when they reveal the Queen, but the camera pans back. Keeps going back and back.
Yeah.
To this ginormous head. I bet most people will just like sitting there going, "What the fuck is going on?"
I tell you, this is really making me think as well. I haven't done before, but really making me think of like those crazy Japanese genre movies that they were making probably around the same time or a little bit after. Stuff like Kashan, and it's. The look of it, incredibly high contrast, no colour whatsoever other than here they've gone with brown and white, and that's exactly what they do or they used to do in those kind of movies as well. And all the gore and deformity and the horror of it and so on, it looks really Japanese.
It does have a slight pissy yellow colour to it.
Yeah.
That's the whole film. Look very pissy.
like a slightly manky scab colour.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what do we make of this new edition then?
I think it's incredibly creepy still. I mean, people, because also you haven't seen Romulus, but they go again with this sort of hybrid thing, and this I don't think made people won over by this design, because it was just too nasty. I think it was, and it was supposed to be what was it? Sort of mixed gender. So it's got like a
Yeah,
penis
it's
and
a hermaphroditic alien,
yeah,
or yeah.
but they kind of took it out the design in post production.
Yeah.
Sort of CGI'd out its genitals basically.
They Linnea Quigley'd it.
Yeah, there's a miniature of it, and it's like, oh dear.
Yeah, the still is. Yeah, it's. No, no.
Oh,
This is just absurd. This is brilliant.
this would definitely be the. I think with the clones are ripped in this sequence here is the creepiest moments, aren't they?
Well, to be honest, I don't. I don't like this alien. I think it looks silly. I don't find it remotely scary. It looks too funny. It's the eyes are too. It looks like an anime character. It's got these big eyes, the turning up Michael Jackson nose, and so on. But I see why they've done it, because I think they want it to be sympathy. They want an element of sympathy for it later. They want us to feel sympathetic for it later on. And to me, it's just, this looks silly to me. I'm not scared of that at all.
I don't know. I think I saw it in person. I'd probably freak out a bit.
Yeah, yeah. That would...
If I was near it, it'd be a different story. But it's got this weird pot belly, hasn't it? And this kind of human-like tongue and eyes. And
it reminds me, it's got a lot of the same problems as the early Showa. Is it the Showa or the Heisei? The early Godzilla movies, not the first ones from the 50s, but there was one era, I think in the 60s or the 70s, when Godzilla had these huge eyes, and it just looks silly. Eyes are the most important thing with a monster like that, always, and you can say so much with them.
but also, Ripley, this monster seems like it kind of moves around at a very sluggish pace. But it seems to catch up with them relatively quickly, because Ripley does like the Stallone cliffhanger jump.
Yeah.
In a moment, which is, it's like, because she's a hybrid with a xenomorph, she can do that. But I know in the in cliffhanger they had to cut it down because it kind of seemed a bit laughable that Stallone could jump that far. A human being could do this. Here we go, back take off. This is all miniatures. They got all that. That's great stuff. But how's this alien get on board? That's I find baffling.
To be honest, that's kind of a running theme in these movies, though, isn't it? There's generally a moment when you have to figure out how the hell did that actually get there.
Yeah. Because it wouldn't have been able to jump that. No way. It seemed far too cumbersome. But because it's like a big practical thing, they can't really do much movement anyway. They get that. That's a good bit of the score. I've not talked about the score really. The guy, is it John Frizzle who did the score to this? John Frizzle. He'd done like Beavis and Butthead to America, And he also did a bunch. He'd done like comedies really, and I'm not sure. I think because he'd done stuff for Fox, I presume he kind of was picked up to do this. I think it's got some. When you hear those themes, oh, that's Alien Resurrection. But I wasn't quite in love with the score like the other films.
I knew you'd talk about the score, so I made a special. As I've said before, I'm a huge music fan, but I don't really notice scores in movies unless they're particularly brilliant or particularly awful. And I kept thinking during this, no, concentrate on the score, so you've got something to say about the score. And at the end of it, I have no idea what any of the music in this. It could have been anything. If I watched it again and it had a completely different score, I don't think I'd notice. It's not a criticism. I'm just useless that way.
it's because it does highlight the original Goldsmith's theme at the beginning, doesn't it? With the when you see her in the cryo tube, getting.
And there's elements of the original score now as well. When she just came on board when she came onto the Betty's Bridge, there's that the
little melody thing.
Yeah,
you hear. So how do you get on board?
That's the beauty of this being schlock. It doesn't matter anymore. They can do what they want now. Proper films have to worry about things like that.
The composer also did Dante's Peak, which is actually a very good score. So he's done action and comedy. Action comedy. That's what it works. So look at the lighting on that miniature there. That's really interesting. It's so different to what you've seen before. With
yeah, and realistic as well when you
spaceships in space. You know what I mean?
And when you see objects in space, it is that distinct, isn't it? It's that bit is in the light and that bit is in the dark. There's no mucking about in between.
No. It's always in like spaceships, isn't it? When something goes wrong, slightly, lots of air comes out. There's fire extinguishers everywhere. It's like, ah.
Is it 2 or 3 times in the last moments I've thought of Star Wars and Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, shouting at Chewbacca. You know what I mean? Losing his temper.
There's even a bit. I think Ron Perlman says something like "Hear me." I think he doesn't literally say "Hear me, baby, hold together," but it's something with a really similar rhythm and point to that famous Han Solo line.
Oh no! Oh, doesn't it just crush his skull? Doesn't it? Move! Oh, that's awful. This is all a comedy to you, Robin.
I'm not mocking it. Genuinely, it's brilliant. The way I'd forgotten all about that. The way he just crushes his head with one hand and then just looks at the mess in his hand.
Well, there's other films around this time, like Species 2, which is like, I think it might be better than the first one because it's so bonkers.
Oh, really? I don't think I've seen the second one.
It's really gross. There's loads of like in-camera, like animatronic stuff and like just guts and weird shit. You'll love it, Rob. You would do, yeah. It's mental. Number 2 is mental. Something I could never review, nor could you, because demonetized, So people listening, don't request films like that because it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. Funny enough, I just noticed yesterday at some point YouTube have demonetized my other Aliens videos. I didn't realise it had happened.
Bastards.
No explanation, but...
Look at that shot there. That is brilliant with the ginormous puppet. Because obviously they've kind of cut out the machine behind it is holding it up or whatever.
Yeah.
Scaffolding.
You can tell it's hanging from something, can't you? Something about the physicality of it.
I've cut out the trolley it's sitting in. Oh no, this bit. Ah! Oh God.
So again, what's her motivation? So she's determined to kill this one now.
Yeah.
Yeah, along with the underwater scene, I think this was my strongest memory of watching this when it first came out. Because I watched it again and again when it first came out on video. Oh yeah, there's some really ropey CG actually, isn't there, from the other side?
Yeah. Well, she's like crying as well, and it's just like seeing it die. Yeah.
To be fair, I mean, I as I've said, I'm not a big fan of the design of this thing, but it is really difficult, isn't it, to blend an alien with a human in a way that doesn't just end up looking like Syl from Species.
Yeah,
and that allows you to make it both scary and, in a moment like this, sympathetic.
yeah, because it's like it's crying and screaming at her, and just like, I can't watch that bit. No, no, don't look. That's why I'm an absolute worst when it comes to this stuff, you know. But it does end with a slight comedy where the skull just goes whoop and just goes through the glass.
Like, Genet just couldn't help himself.
God. I always thought the digital stuff here, where you see the planet Earth, it just looks too digital.
Yeah, that looks
quite,
like a shot that they didn't have enough time for, or something.
Yeah,
It's not even the right perspective on the angle of the thing.
It doesn't look right. Oh, that's bad dialogue.
That is someone for whom English isn't their first language thought that was going to be hilarious. Clearly, it's one of those lines. So is this the most kind of messed up and disturbing thing we've done? We've done commentaries for.
Yeah, in terms of it being a bit gross, isn't it? Yeah, I mean,
It's really quite full on in places.
The beginning of RoboCop is a bit nasty, which we did.
True, yeah.
And RoboCop 2 is just a bit mean spirited in a little couple of moments, but yeah, this is the most graphic, I think, really.
I think everyone reacts to different things differently, don't they? Like
They do.
The numbers 1 to 7 in the jars earlier, I would rather not look at. But that thing getting sucked through the window is gravy for me. But it's the same with all these films, isn't it? I watched. Did you see Fall? With the two girls stuck up the radio mast.
No.
One of those high concept single word thrillers where it's two girls climb a radio mast. It's like 2,000 feet tall, and then get stuck at the top, and no one knows they're there. And it's it's a perfectly effective little thriller. But I'm terrible with heights. And I watched it the other night. Yeah. My daughter made me watch it because she loves it. And I've never, ever had so much trouble watching a film before.
Seriously?
I could not handle it. Closing my eyes wouldn't help. I literally had to bury my head in cushions.
Oh my God.
And I found myself thinking, is this what people who can't handle or don't like horror or violence even, is this the sensations that they experience?
Yeah. I gather. I mean, I'm a bit like that with like embarrassing comedy where it's too cringy. I'm like, I can't watch this. Oh, God,
Yeah.
It's like The Office where it's like a bit embarrassing.
I'm the same.
I'm like, God. Well, that's the end. My God, they get to Earth, which kind of weirdly from the beginning you see like America, it looked like it was just like no trees or forest or whatever. It was just like a desert. Then you sort of go over parts of it and you see there is kind of like wildlife there, but it doesn't really give you a hint that Earth is kind of screwed, other than the fact that Ron Perlman said it's a dump. But in the extended cut you see that, which is behind me. Well, obviously we're recording this via Zoom, but I've got like a background effect. But yeah, he destroyed Paris. Or it could be Vegas, you don't know. It could be Vegas where they've still got an Eiffel Tower. It could be anywhere where it's got an Eiffel Tower. But yeah, it's a weird one, Resurrection, because it's moments of it where it looks gorgeous, good production design, performances are generally good, even though they're a bit more wacky and somewhat a bit of overacting in places. It's got the Studio ADI doing all the creature effects, which are all gooey and a bit too gooey and dribbly in this one, I think. And the beast at the end is kind of, again, a mixed thing where you were saying, even when you sort of create this hybrid, you're always going to get this kind of design that's always going to be a bit weird, and I think it was a bit too weird for many people. And I think tonally it's a bit inconsistent in places. Sigourney's performance, it's still a good performance, but it's ultimately a bit confusing with where she's going with her character. And I think it's got boils down to the script being a bit somewhat generic in places.
This is it. I mean, this is my biggest problem with it, is that it's too generic. To be clear, I prefer to watch this film than any of the other Alien movies, with the obvious exception of the first two. It doesn't mean I necessarily think it's as good as the third one, say, which it has some incredibly good stuff in it. But that is the problem. It's just a bit too generic. It wants to be a bit. I mean, the idea is great, but it's not particularly original. So you've got to find something to do with it that's different. You've got to find somewhere to take it that's different, and I don't think they do. And I think it perhaps all stems from the fact that it's being made. This is a film made by a person who would never normally watch a film like this and doesn't have any interest in films like this. He's a professional doing a job.
Yeah,
for the good of his career. And I think that kind of comes through. There's just a slightly...
It feels like a bit of a Richard Lester making a Superman film. We had no interest in Superman.
Yeah, you could be right there, actually. Yeah.
But it still does it competently, though. That's the thing. It feels very... It feels like it's a played safe studio picture, despite them sort of being very graphic and gory, which people come to expect.
That's the irony of it all. We're saying it's played safe and they needed to be bolder and so on, but it actually features individual scenes and moments that are really extreme and quite hardcore. But
maybe that was a reflection to compete what was going on with horror movies, and especially with things like Species and things like that. It was from '95, and but also I think it's lacking Giler and Hill.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Gordon Carroll as well, but I think it was always more focused around David Giler and Walter Hill in terms of creative input. I think it's missing their input.
I think some of the things that don't make sense and some of the things that make you go, hang on, what? Or why? That's exactly the kind of stuff that someone like David Giler would have ironed out. I think he'd have beaten that script around until it made sense. Until everything was in play, all the ducks were in a row.
I think they could. I think they should have recreated the end of number 3, where you see maybe get a cameo of Lance Henriksen and the guys freezing something, at the Fury 161, whatever it's called, and have a little bit of a backstory before we introduce to Ripley. Just a little bit of connecting the pieces. But maybe it was to them. It's just like, well, it's more kind of just get people right back into it without having this kind of waffle at the beginning. But I think that maybe sort of do a little bit of groundwork to sort of give you a bit of backstory instead of just giving over a little bit of dialogue in the cafeteria. We see where she figures out what's happened.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But on the whole, I don't know. I like that movie. I'm a fan.
It's not, like I say, if in films that had number 4. Hellraiser 4 stinks. Batman and Robin stinks. Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers is not a great movie.
Superman 4.
Superman 4, yeah.
Jaws 4.
Jaws 4.
The Crow 4.
Oh, the one, yeah, that's the one you hate, isn't it? Number 4.
I have a violent hatred of The Crow 4, yeah.
What about Crow 2? I saw that on video. I thought it was terrible.
It just isn't very good, yeah. It
doesn't make any sense. I remember.
Talk about movies that don't need sequels. I think The Crow is probably
Never needed one. But yeah, Alien 4. I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, people often cite it as the worst out of all of them, alongside with depends on what you feel about Prometheus as well. But I think all of them, even the ones that have their faults. We're not including AVP, okay? So, but out of all of them have their faults. They've always got something really interesting about them, and that's what kind of makes people go back to them, isn't it? That's what I've gone back to number 4 a bunch of times. The same with number 3. There's always, it's despite some of it not making much sense or being a bit of a letdown. It's always got some good performances in there.
Made by interesting filmmakers. All of them are made by interesting filmmakers, really, up until AVP 2. I mean, I'd even say that AVP has its moment. I think I prefer that. I think I like that movie a little more than you do. But I probably like Prometheus a little less, to be honest. So
than I do. Play the Resurrection video game, which took 3 years to come out. It was 3 years too late.
God,
but yeah,
I bet everyone was queuing up for that on release day.
Surprisingly, a very good game. Well, folks, that is the end of the commentary. Me and Rob will be back with RoboCop 3.
Yeah,
which was on the list of Rob's worst movies ever before we started getting into, writing about. Was it before you got? Yeah, before you started writing about movies, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would. That was my traditional go-to worst film I'd ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Well, I think for the next one, my friend Audie Surley, who had appeared on a number of the Van Damme commentaries in the past, will be joining us because he has some interesting tidbits and trivia about Robocop 3 from his trips to Japan. Because Robocop 3 was like the number one movie there for a month when it came out.
Jesus.
Japanese are mad. There's no account for taste, is there? So. Okay, everyone, take care of yourselves and goodbye for now.